Hello and welcome to Main Street Matters by Heart on Main Street, the podcast that thinks about the unthinkable so you don't have to. I am your host, Patrick Kaiser. Today's episode will be a recording of a recent conversation that I had with Heather Ingersoll of Hometown Insurance. Insurance for retailers might not be the sexiest topic, but it is an incredibly important one. There has been so much that has changed with insurance over the last several years that it's really crucial that retailers know about their coverage and know what protections they have and where they might be liable in the event of a disaster. So this conversation really hit home for me as I've been working with retailers who have lost their stores and have not had insurance coverage to keep them protected. I think it's vital that retailers know about terminology, coverages, and options available to them so that in the event of the unthinkable, they can reduce their worries knowing that they are covered. So here's my conversation with Heather Ingersoll of Hometown Insurance. Heather, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Heather, I am so excited to have you on today. I think today we're going to be talking about insurance needs and insurance concepts for retailers, which I think is an incredibly important topic because, as some of you may know, one of the focuses of Heart on Main Street is to help out retailers that have been impacted by natural disasters. And in every single case of retailers that we have worked with, there has been some sort of insurance issue, whether they were underinsured, they didn't have insurance for the type of event that they went through, they didn't know about how to file paperwork properly, or they were unfamiliar with just different concepts of insurance before the event happened. So I think this is an incredibly important topic. It's something that retailers might not think that they need to know or understand more about until it's maybe too late. So I think this is going to be a great conversation, and I'm really excited for it. So to start us off, why don't you tell us a little bit about Hometown Insurance, where you all are based, and what you do with retailers?
Sure. Hometown Insurance is a property, casualty, life, and health agency, meaning we write all lines. Our specialty is business and ag. So we are about 60% commercial. So we love small businesses and farms. And we also do a little bit of the benefits side as well. So employee benefits, group health, things like that. We are based out of Colorado, but we are licensed in about 4 other states right now. And then the benefit side, we are able to do that on a national level.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So whether you're our watchers, listeners, whether you are from Colorado or not, there may be another agency in your area if you're maybe East Coast based or Midwest. But if you're so Colorado, Utah, where all do you cover?
Right now we're licensed in Colorado, Nevada, Wyoming, and I'm missing one. There's another one.
Okay, another
in
one.
that
So,
region.
so I thought Utah, maybe not Utah, but so can you, as we're going into, can you explain kind of the state of insurance for retailers? I know there's been a lot of increases for insurance over the past couple years. Can you talk a little bit about the state of insurance for retailers?
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's seen a little bit of this because, to be honest, this is probably the toughest market I've seen it, and I've been in the industry for 18 years.
Okay.
So it is, it's because of a couple different factors. One is basically profitability. The insurance carriers have been hit with massive losses in the last couple years and are trying to stay in business and
Sure.
shift and adjust to get there. So you're seeing a lot of rate increases. You're seeing just to kind of to make up for that loss ratio that they've been having. Um, Also, the state that we're in with inflation is driving everything, including insurance. When a company pays a claim and the cost of materials or whatever to put it back together is now 3 times higher,
Oof.
they're paying out larger amounts. Therefore, it all kind of just compiles. So you're seeing it being a tougher market when it comes to prices. You're also seeing companies take a perspective of shifting on what they are writing.
Okay.
So a lot of this stuff they're just getting a lot tighter on. Um, Fortunately, retailers are still a really good class of business that most carriers like to write. So you guys are kind of in a niche, and I would say the majority of insurance providers still want that business.
Okay. Yeah. And talking with other retailers, I know, things like, because of inflation and, if you had a, let's say, $200,000 policy 5 years ago, that did cover a whole lot more than it's covering now, because cost of construction and everything that goes, it doesn't go as far as it used to.
It actually reminds me of that little scene from Austin Powers when he goes to the future and he wants to do a ransom of $1 million, and they're like, his
Yes.
advisor's like,
Like,
that
okay, that's
doesn't
fine. Wait,
cover as
$1
much as.
billion
Yeah,
dollars.
there's like
Yes.
that's not as much as you think it is. Yeah, it's true. I mean, people have thought for years $1 million you were golden, which was the case, perhaps in that time, but right now, I mean, it's just you have to really look at what you're covered at, because just because you set it in stone 10 years ago doesn't mean it's you're still covered for
Yeah.
today's market.
Yeah. And that was, a good policy for a long time. And then inflation and during COVID and everything, cost of construction increases, all of these different things that go into, in a disaster or just any insurance that to make them whole again, it's just significantly more expensive than it used to be. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what is the value of working with a professional versus purchasing coverage online? Where is the value there?
Absolutely. Um, well, a professional honestly should be somebody that you trust. So not just somebody that's a professional, but also that piece is important because they need to be able to cater a policy based on your needs. And to do that and provide you the options and let you make your choice without being sold. Um,
Yeah.
and that service is it's just huge because insurance is, I mean, it's not a sexy subject. It's not something that most people love to read up on. So, I mean, there is a lot of misconception when it comes to insurance. And so to have somebody that is kind of a master of the trade in that is going to be helpful for you so you can focus on what you're good at. It's also going online can it used to kind of there was a kind of a trend for a while of just everything was convenience and going online and
Absolutely. Yeah.
price, and but that also now people are seeing the effects of you get what you paid for, and you're ultimately when you go online your primary focus is most likely price, and you need to know what you're paying for because being significantly underinsured is about the same as being not insured at all.
Right.
So, yeah, so having that professional that can help you, advise you, explain terminology that you might not understand, that is all something that there's value in.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you talk a little bit about, you talked about pricing and why is it important to select, based on policy and not just going for that lowest price just to, make sure that you're covered?
Yeah, absolutely. So you do get what you pay for sometimes when you go in and you're just basing it on price. Um, when you are when you're in a situation where you experience a loss and this is your business, this is your baby, this is what you worked for, and you don't have the coverage in place, I mean, it's devastating. And people can, I mean, it doesn't take much. Um, it can even take somebody suing you because you didn't,
Mm.
um, shovel your sidewalk and you had snow and they broke their hip or
Oh,
whatever.
geez.
I mean,
Yeah.
it could take something like that, one situation that can put you out of business. So being insured properly is so important because you've invested so much in this, and now we need to cover.
Yeah.
for what it is.
Yeah.
And price, it is important. It's definitely an important factor, but it's not the only factor. And you'd rather pay a little bit more on the front end, knowing what you're getting, than saving that chunk in the beginning and then having to come out of pocket a lot of times too, um, in the event where now you're in the situation where you have the loss.
Yeah, and I think kind of holistic like that is what you're talking about of working with someone and not just going online and understanding so that you can bounce ideas off of them. They can look out for you. They can make sure that you are completely covered and not just going for that lowest price. We know as retailers we need the insurance, and so sometimes there's that tendency to I'm going to get a basic coverage. I'm just going to get that basic package, and but then they won't have someone kind of fact check or back check that you actually are missing out on this, and here's your liability, and here's where you have holes that yeah, if someone were to fall in front of your store, that you're not covered for that, or you're not covered as much as you should be, and you're going to have a huge payment out for that, and that might be out of pocket. So uh
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I've looked at, in comparing, with different retailers where, there I found huge gaps. I found
Hmm.
their properties insured for what's called actual cash value
Okay.
instead of replacement cost. So basically saying, instead of going out and replacing all your business personal property in the store, for what it's worth today, we're going to take it and we're going to depreciate it based on its age, and we're going to give you the
Hmm.
reduced amount. And so, like,
Interesting. Okay.
yes, and then
Yeah,
here,
because that
that's
was 10 years old, it is not
yes.
worth as much, but the cost for me to rebuy one, it doesn't change, although you're giving me less for that.
Yeah, so I mean, some of those little tiny things
Yeah,
are
interesting.
huge, when it comes to your coverage.
Yeah. So how do you recommend retailers stay up to date on their insurance to be fully protected to make sure that, things like that, that they are aware of those things?
Um, Again, I would recommend working with a professional and utilizing a review, on an annual basis. I think it's important because, everything's changing, and to stay up to date, make sure that, have you increased your inventory in the store? Have you, when was the last time, if you own the building, there was a um, valuation done on the building to find out what it would cost to rebuild it if there was a complete loss? Um, so, just kind of going through and having a review on what you currently have and what you need to have, and kind of checking those boxes is important. There's also, there's other lines of insurance that, maybe you're at a point now where your net worth, where your worth as a business has kind of grown. Maybe we need to add some layers of protection, like an umbrella policy, because now if somebody sues you, that $1 million it's not gonna cut it anymore. Now we need to
Okay.
go. So yeah, there's definitely some advantage to just kind of going through it, or having the professional go through it with
Yeah.
you, so you can kind of check those boxes.
Yeah, and make sure that yeah, you are completely covered. That event of a fire happens, that you can rebuild your store and you can remain in business afterward. Which
Absolutely.
yeah, you've used a couple terminologies so far, and was wondering if you could kind of help explain some of those things you had mentioned. And actually, this is a case that I talked with a recent retailer about that they had an instance where they had talked about inventory, which you had just mentioned. And to them, inventory meant things on the shelves that I can sell. But in actuality, inventory means a little bit more in an insurance instance. Then you also talked about umbrella policies, and maybe what are some other terms that retailers should know about, so they should be familiar with from an insurance standpoint, so they are up to date and most knowledgeable.
Absolutely. I would say the term for insurance is more often used as business personal property, but what that encompasses, if you're a tenant, for example, is all of your stuff inside of the store. So this could mean actual inventory. It can mean your furniture, your furnishings, anything like that, that tenant finishes, anything like that that you are responsible for, that is yours, versus just the shell of the building.
Okay.
And if you are the building owner, I mean, it's
It's the whole
including
thing.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have your building, and then you have your business personal property, which is everything inside.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And
There's
the
also,
umbrella. No, sorry.
go ahead.
Please. No.
I
Go
was just
ahead.
going to say there's also coverage, that extends for signage and things like that, but that's
Okay.
typically listed somewhere else.
Gotcha. And you mentioned umbrella policy. Can you explain what that would be?
Yeah, so there is a huge misconception on what an umbrella policy is, and I see this a lot. I've actually had a retailer that thought they were covered because they have an umbrella policy basically over their home,
Okay.
and didn't think they needed insurance working, like having a space in a store. So let me break this down when it comes to
Yeah.
that, because it's so completely different. So an umbrella policy is a separate policy. It is not included in like a homeowner's policy or in your business. It can be purchased on the personal side, um, or it can be purchased on the commercial or business side. Think of it as an actual umbrella that you open up, and it just
Gotcha.
covers everything inside. So on the personal lines, the umbrella will cover over your home and your auto, say a boat, things like that. It extends all the limits over there. On the commercial side, it's going to be over your general liability for your business. So what that means is, if let's have that same example where you had a client that broke a hip walking into your store and slipped on ice or what have you, and they sue you, and your policy limit isn't enough,
Okay.
then your umbrella would an additional whatever, let's say it's $1 million. So let's say you had a business owner's policy and you had $100,000 liability limit. And then once that gets used up, that's when your umbrella kicks in. So it's, as I mentioned, kind of another layer of protection.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of covering your base, and it does cover things like getting sued as well. So it covers the court costs, things like that. So one getting sued one time can be
Be
all you need.
devastating. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Which
And
yeah,
the
we don't
cost of an
want.
umbrella typically is not very much. I mean, of course, it does vary by state and by all the things, but I would say
Okay.
average,
Yeah.
depending on the business. But we're not talking thousands and thousands of dollars
Yeah.
here.
Okay. It's that extra layer on there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are there other terms that, maybe in your interaction with retail or just other people that just, I don't know, a difference of maybe what people thought versus how insurance would see
Yeah.
would see that term?
Yeah. So there's a lot of terms that I actually sometimes catch myself using, and
Yeah,
I have to
they're probably
remember
second nature
because
to you. Yeah.
we start geeking out when we get, behind the scenes with all the other insurance people. But replacement cost, for example, you'll see on a policy it says either RC or ACV. I kind of touched on that. RC is for replacement cost, whereas ACV is actual cash value. And again, that is the determination between depreciating out your stuff or today's price, what you can get it for. So just those pieces are two important things to look for on your policy to make sure you have everything
And
covered,
the
right?
ACV is the depreciated cost?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
And okay.
Yep. And then a lot of, I don't know how many people, but there is a term, it's perils. And that is what what type of losses the insurance company covers. And
Okay.
there's different forms. I won't go into all that, but basically perils are things like um, wind, lightning, hail, fire, those are all
Yeah.
different types of perils. So that's a
Okay.
term maybe some people aren't really understanding. Um, there are the three different types of forms, but special is the the most comprehensive. So special basically means we're going to cover everything except for the buts, except for
Okay.
the things that are excluded.
Got it.
Um,
Got it. Okay.
so whereas like the basic policy is going to say we're only covering the things that are listed. So
Okay.
having special coverage is your best option by far. Um, I'm just thinking, I don't know if any off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, that's and so, when you talk about that, the kind of the everything buts, so what that would cover, what wouldn't that cover, I guess? And
So
is there
there are
maybe
certain
instances? Yeah.
exclusions
Yeah.
on policies. One main one that a lot of people don't realize is flood.
Right.
And
Okay.
flood is considered when it hits the ground and seeps in. That is
Hmm.
considered flood. So in order to have flood coverage, you actually have to purchase a flood insurance policy, which is separate. And it is a lot of it is dependent on your flood zone, I guess, you
Yeah.
know. But that's an addition to. So that's just not something that's normally covered. That is different, of course, if you had a frozen pipe in the building that burst and then
Okay.
water damage occurred because the way that it happened wasn't seeping through the ground. But
Got it.
those are some things that are not covered. A lot of times you have to I guess one thing that just came up when you are writing a new policy, a lot of times you can choose to accept or reject terrorism coverage.
Interesting. Okay.
So that is one that you kind of have to choose off of. I would just say, as a generality, it is very um, vague on kind of the coverage that it does cover. So
Okay.
I would definitely talk to your local professional on whether they would advise that for you or not.
Yeah.
But that was one, and that, things like, I'm just trying to think. Um, but like theft is a covered peril
Okay.
if it's just on a regular special form. So that's huge. Someone breaks into your place of business and robs you, you want to make sure you have that special form for that, or
Got it.
that
Okay.
you just need to make sure that that's covered.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know, one of the retailers we've worked with, flood damage was them. That was the culprit for them. It was in Florida, hurricane, and yeah, just flood insurance in Florida was expensive, so they opted to not have it. And yeah, just kind of fingers crossed that it wouldn't impact them. And unfortunately, it did. That they had to that they weren't covered for that type of event. And it just, it's heartbreaking, but
It
making
is.
sure that you're covered for things, especially, if that you're in an area where maybe you're susceptible to that, or maybe, in
Absolutely.
Colorado, I'm sure it's fires, or
Yeah.
I don't know if the like snow, or if that would be
Yeah.
something, yeah, I don't know, avalanche or something would be a part of an insurance coverage, but
Yeah, it is important to kind of have that conversation to find out what is pertains to you and in
yeah,
your area and in your business, because there are several types and you don't want to be insurance poor, but
right,
you want to make sure that your needs are covered.
yeah,
And especially, yeah, if you're in a flood zone, I mean, that can wipe you out. That actually brings up another coverage that I just thought about. My husband works for a restoration company. So they go
mm,
in there, whether it be a water or fire damage, mitigate everything, and then put it back together.
okay,
And in this situation, retailer, they had a flood. Um, the There is a coverage that is an optional coverage on a policy that is for business income.
okay,
And again, this is not one that's just built in, so you actually have to kind of look for that. But this would cover a business It would provide business income while they have to kind of suspend the business daily
Oh, okay.
operations while the damage is being repaired or what have you. So that time frame, a lot of times, let's say it takes 6 months,
Yeah.
4 months, whatever it may be. A lot of businesses don't have enough cash flow to just sustain that.
Yeah.
So this is a recommended coverage that I think all retailers should look into.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I've always wondered that because yeah, if the store is, your livelihood, if that is where a great portion of your income is coming from, and there's a fire, there's a tornado, there's something that goes on and that the store is not operational, yeah, I mean, what happens there? So really glad to hear that there's things that help kind of with the help replace that income for retailers or for business owners. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
now let's talk about, the event happens. What is the process? What do they need? How can they make the insurance process go smoother so that to have less gray hairs at the end of at the end of the day?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a stressful time
Yeah.
and it's a little bit of heartache too when it's your baby and
Yeah.
everything is kind of a mess. Again, I would say it kind of starts with that relationship. If you have a relationship with your insurance agent or broker, and you can call them and you can give them the information and have them file a claim for you, that
Mm,
is going to take a lot off your plate so that you can kind of focus on kind of what you need to focus on.
good. Yeah.
Um, the other side of that, like what the agent can do for you is, I mean, if you don't have that situation, you bought something online, now you have to probably call in an 800 number. You're probably going to be on hold. You're going to get in touch with somebody who's probably not going to be as
They don't know
sensitive
you.
to
Yeah.
your situation as you'd probably like. They're going to run through a bunch of questions, and it's just going to be a little bit more. It's not going to make the process as smooth and as personable. But after that claim is filed, that's typically when an adjuster is assigned, and then they kind of take over from there. That is their realm, is the claim side. So then they would work with you um, based on whatever coverage you have on your policy and how that's going to look, how they're going to pay out. Getting what, let's say, contractors in there to do work, paying all that stuff. Another thing that you need to be aware of is your deductible. A lot of times people think this is something that they just maybe pay to the insurance or that it's just deducted, but ultimately the insurance company is going to pay you what they owe from your policy coverage less your deductible.
Okay.
So first of all, make sure that that is something you're comfortable with going into it. I know that there are a lot of high, even percentage deductibles in, let's say, Colorado specifically, for wind and hail. So if you have a 5% deductible on your building and you have a $1.5 million building,
Hmm.
that's going to be your out-of-pocket expense. So just kind of be aware of what that is. It has to be something that you're comfortable with as a business owner. But you would then typically, let's say there's contractors hired to do the work, you would then pay that deductible to the contractor.
Okay.
So the
Got it.
insurance is going to pay it all less that amount, and then you're responsible. It's your skin in the game, if you will.
Yeah.
So that it does help a little bit balance your rates. Sometimes you can go a higher deductible to kind of get a lower premium, but
Okay.
then
That's what
ultimately it's your responsibility. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that's what I was asking. Why would people want that higher deductible? Probably because it brings their monthly cost or the
Yes.
whenever
Their
they're paying.
premium rate
Yeah,
down.
yeah, it brings that down. Okay. But yeah, in the event something happens, then you're out of pocket for significantly more.
Yeah.
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 So is there, I mean, paperwork or things that retailers should have kind of on hand or to help with the adjusters, to help with the insurance kind of as they're going along that they can provide?
Um, yes. So to initially file the claim, just get your policy number.
Okay. Yeah.
Your agent should have it.
Should
If
know.
you're
Yeah.
filing yourself, yeah, you're going to need that. Um, but a good thing that I usually recommend is that people keep some sort of an inventory. I know that probably all your retailers are very organized and on the spot, but for those that might not be, um, you know, even if it's not a physical writing everything down, but even if it is just taking a video throughout your store
Okay.
of all your stuff and keeping that somewhere off premises or sending it to your insurance broker or whoever to have offhand so that you can kind of provide a true inventory list or limit, of what you have
Yeah.
in the event of that complete loss. Because trying to then go back and try to remember everything it's
Right. I mean,
impossible.
yeah, impossible. I mean, if you're buying from, you know, 45 different companies and you have a couple hundred different products within your store, yeah, yeah, you don't know. So either
Hmm.
keeping a well-documented inventory list, not only of product, but also of the other things within your store.
Yep,
You know,
furniture, furnishings, all that.
yeah, probably computer, anything
Computers,
that's
yeah,
that lives within the store, and making sure that you have that documented and in up to date. So yeah, if it goes away, then you can say, hey, this is the value of what we had in the store.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, good. Any other recommendations that you have for retailers?
I guess, and a lot of it is just it's all gonna go depending on the situation, on how everything is, laid out in that claims process. But for you to be able to kind of have some of your ducks in a row, it really does help the overall flow of things.
Yeah,
Um, and typically you have the choice on who you want to use. So working with good contractors, it's not up to you to find the cheapest. It's up to you to find who you want to find to do your work. So, um, yeah, I would say just kind of take your time and who you choose to work with, and make sure that anything that they're asking for, you're kind of providing. I know that on the construction side and when we have to kind of repair everything, a lot of times that can be a process and there's just
yeah,
delays with different things that are inevitable. But anything you can do to if it's even if it's like moving all your stuff out of the store so they can get to work, so your stuff
okay,
isn't damaged, things like that, you got to kind of roll with the punches on
yeah.
that one.
And yeah, it sounds, yeah, the more organized you are in advance ahead of time, the better, kind of easier things can go for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. We'd also talked before, the um, can you explain the difference between an agent and a broker? You've talked about an agent, you've talked about a broker, kind of that terminology.
Yeah, so an insurance agent is typically works for one company, one carrier. So they sell products for X company. Um, Whereas an insurance broker has several carriers that they work with.
Okay.
And so they're kind of able to pick and choose. If something doesn't fit, they can go a different way. Um, I would say the benefit of working with an independent broker versus an agent or a captive insurance agent is options.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, you
Yeah.
want to be able to give yourselves options, and the person, like for me, being able to work and find my clients something that fits my clients needs versus something trying to fit them in a box because this is all
Yeah.
we offer. That's kind of where the difference lies. And a lot of times, yeah, you can again, the retailer market is typically um a good class of business that most carriers like to write. But when you're working with an independent broker, they can kind of shop that around with all these carriers
Right.
and give you the
Right.
best option versus just giving you the one.
This
So
is this is what we have
ultimately,
available. Yeah.
yeah, it comes down to options.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always nice to be able to have options, be able to price, compare things against each other, and make sure
Hmm.
that you're comfortable with what you have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll leave some time for Q&A. If there's anybody that has questions for Heather, that wants to pick her brain, that has had insurance issues in the past, that might be going through something, or they just want to make sure that they're prepared, please pop them in the Q&A section or the chat section. We'd love to hear from you. Heather, any other kind of last posing thoughts or recommendations for retailers?
I will leave you with a kind of
Yeah,
10
please.
tips, 10
Yeah,
things a
that's
retailer should
awesome. I'd love to
know.
kind of boil it down. Yes, absolutely.
And that way you can kind of just a reference, if anything. It's just a very basic thing. But ultimately, I know it a lot of times people like to turn a blind eye to insurance, but it's so necessary to protect what you've worked for and what you've built. And
Yeah.
so don't don't just take that um, I guess that perception of just looking past it or whatever, or going
Yeah.
for the cheapest or whatever. Make sure that you've got the coverage you need so that you can continue to thrive.
Good. Yeah, it's something that people probably don't want to deal with a lot, but it's incredibly necessary.
Yes, definitely.
So Carrie asks, is additional coverage needed if other vendors or pop-up shops are in your store periodically? Oh, great question. So they have other stores that, pop-ups that come up into their store. Do they need additional coverage for that?
Yeah, if you're having other businesses come in, they should carry their own insurance. They would be kind of seen as kind of like a subcontractor. And so, if you're having them, especially if you own the store or the premise or whatever, they should have some type of, even if they're not like a full-time retailer, if they just kind of do this thing on the side, even if they do some kind of event insurance, something for a while they're in the space. And then they should also list your company as an additional insured on their policy, so that their coverage is going to be primary, basically.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen a lot of stores like that where they have, be a big space and they have either booths or they have kind of their own section. It might be
Yes.
5 or 6 other stores within, or they have a pop-up in there. Okay,
Or
good. So
trade
they should.
shows, things like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
very popular. Yeah, and you have to have something in place for your business.
Good. And those, yeah, so those that are popping that have the pop-ups, they should have their own insurance. So if
Yes.
something
Yeah.
happens in their space, they're the primary. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great question. Thank you. Did you want to talk about a couple of your couple
Sure.
takeaways?
I guess one of them is just general liability is a must. If you're a business owner, you have to have general liability.
Yeah.
So make sure you have that, and make sure your limits are adequate. If I write a policy, I don't write anything under 1 million, and I don't typically recommend that. Again, we talked about 1 million isn't what it used to be, and it's a great, it's usually kind of a standard line. If anybody is requiring you to carry insurance, they usually require you to have at least 1 million.
Okay.
Um, there are, the business personal property is your stuff. So whether you own or you're a tenant, you have that business personal property. Make sure it's covered in the event of a complete loss. We talked about deductibles, and how that is your out-of-pocket expense. So weigh that when you're considering price and what you are comfortable with, basically having your own that skin in the game.
Yeah.
The business income was a big one that I just wanted to make sure everybody explores. If they don't have it, or if you don't know if you have it, maybe look into it. It's really not that costly upfront, but um, it's going to really give you kind of that peace when something does happen. Workers' compensation, you got to have if you have employees,
Mm.
but ultimately you got to cover your employees. There is another piece to that. Well, it's not really tied into workers' comp, but it's hired auto. And that's something I didn't mention, but that is something that you can purchase on your business owner's policy, even if you don't have a business auto. And this covers your employees if they, for example, would run errands using their
Okay.
own vehicle for the business. So let's say you have somebody run to the bank during
Right.
work hours and they take their own vehicle and something happens. This is going to cover because they're at work, they're doing it for work, but they were using their vehicle.
But they're,
So
yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
yeah, hired auto is what that is for. And then umbrella coverage we talked about. I mean, it's usually pretty insignificant to add, and I would always recommend having the umbrella coverage. Um, we talked about the building insurance, making sure that you are just looking at that or reviewing that at least every couple years. Don't if it's a 20-year-old policy that you haven't looked at since then, it's time for review for
Yep.
sure. Um, but yeah, those are
Things have
kind of
changed.
some of
Excellent.
the basics. Yeah.
Well, Heather, I really appreciate you being on today. I've learned a lot. I hope all our retailers have learned a lot as well. They're able to be more knowledgeable about things that will help their business, will help them be covered in the case of really anything happening. We have someone typing in, so wait for a question here. But so helpful. Thank you, Crystal. Quick plug for our next webinar, which will be May 22nd. Actually, I don't know if this is the same Crystal, but it'll be with Crystal Vilkaitis. And we'll be talking about AI and how retailers can use that to help grow their business. So should be a really exciting topic. I hope to see you all there. But Heather, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Again, I think our retailers have been able to learn a lot and come out a lot more prepared to talk about their business and feel more comfortable what they're looking for in insurance. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. Yes, I enjoyed
Absolutely. Yeah.
it.
All right. Well, have a wonderful day. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Again, that was Heather Ingersoll of Hometown Insurance. To find out more about Heart on Main Street or register for any upcoming webinars or even view previous webinars that we've hosted, you can go to www.heartonmainstreet.org. Today's episode was written, produced, researched, and edited by me, Patrick Kaiser, with a very special thanks to Heather Ingersoll. I hope you all have enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Stay safe, shop local, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.